Back in 2019, I traveled over to Buenos Aires. I was meant to be staying there for a week and then traveling on to Rio. On the third night of being in Buenos Aires, I headed out and I was meeting a group of Americans, and we were going to a cooking and cocktail making experience. During that night, we had way too many empanadas and far too many cocktails, and I ended up stumbling out of this place with them and then getting completely lost from the group. I ended up in this really quiet part of the town. And to make matters worse, I was wearing a cream chinos and a blazer, which in parts of Buenos Aires is like drawing a bullseye on your forehead. It's extremely dangerous. And as I was walking down one of these streets, I realized, first of all, that probably shouldn't have been there. And then, secondly, out of nowhere came a large object that struck the side of my head. So much so that I fell to the ground and I was then unconscious. I managed to kind of gather myself, and then I looked up and I saw four guys and one of their boots coming straight from my head. And that was the last thing I remembered. I was then found on the side of the road by, thankfully, a good Samaritan who then called the police, where I was completely covered in blood. My nose was broken, my face was completely swollen. I was in a very bad way. I got taken then to the hospital and I got taken straight for MRI scans. And the next thing I remember waking up and looking up and seeing these two people looking at me and this big bright light above their head was these two nurses. And the first thing they asked me was, "Do you know your name?" I thankfully did know my name, and they both looked very relieved. They then said, "You are extremely lucky to be alive. We did brain scans and we checked to see if there was any internal bleeding or swelling of the brain, and thankfully you look okay, but we need to monitor the situation." So obviously this was a huge shock, knowing that this had all happened. And obviously I was feeling horrendous at this time. I was vomiting. I was just in a complete state. Now, when I was going through all this, I came back to where I live, back to the country that I live in. And as I was there going through this, I realized there was something that I wasn't telling people, because a lot of people were asking me, what happened to you in Buenos Aires? I said, "Oh, well, I got mugged." Oh, and they all, they said, "Oh, we feel sorry for you about that." And, "Oh, it's crazy that someone would mug you." But I kept holding back something from them. I didn't tell them the whole story. I didn't tell them that I got completely drunk that night to the point of blacking out and then not knowing where I was going. And this isn't the first time this has happened. Alcohol has played a bit of a negative role in my life, where I've been using it as a way to escape. And on that night, I used it again as that tool. And it led to me getting into that situation and nearly losing my life. But not only that, there was another part to this story which I wasn't telling people. And this was coming to terms with what has gone on in my childhood. And that relates to, unfortunately, child abuse, where at the age of 6, a neighbor sexually abused me for 6 months. And it was quite a severe and traumatic experience, because the guy was extremely violent as well. It didn't happen in my home. It would happen near a wooded area near my home. And He would be extremely violent as well. He would pick me up, he would throw me off the ground, he would throw me into thorns, into bushes. I mean, it was kind of very, very severe. And I didn't want to tell my family about this because I was afraid. I was afraid if I said anything, he might do something to my family or he might even do something to me. Who knows? The guy was a bit crazy and, he was a neighbor, so he didn't live far away. So he essentially kind of domineered me as a very young boy. I mean, I was 6 years of age. I mean, a 6-year-old, if you know of anyone who is 6 years of age, they're just children, they shouldn't have to experience this. So for me, this really played a big, heavy, I would say it was like a heavy stone inside of me, on my soul and within me. And it kind of came out later in my life, in my 20s and my 30s. And that incident in Buenos Aires was really the greatest wake-up call I ever had in my life, because I realized that it was maybe God's way of saying to me, you have to deal with this. I'm giving you another chance. You've survived this, but this is my way of telling you, you need to change. You need to address your problems. You need to stand up to them. You need to dig in. It's not going to be comfortable, but you won't get another chance. Maybe the next time you go out and you get drunk, maybe you're going to get hit by a car. Maybe you're going to, who knows? And that's what this has been, is that it's been a journey of healing now for the past 4 or 5 years, starting therapy, doing meditation, starting to be kinder to myself, empathetic to myself. I stopped drinking for a whole year, got it under management. And it's been such a rewarding process, because you start to feel happier about your day to day. Just even the simple things become happier. And I never had that before. And I always had this pressure and this build up, the anxiety inside. But now I realize that what was missing was that I didn't deal with my stuff. Frustrated, angry, to healing and empathy.